All right, checking in at number 2 of our top 10 receivers in college football heading into the 2024 season is my number 2 receiver, but Dalton's number 1 receiver in college football. That is Tetairoa McMillan from Arizona. So, Dalton, take it away, man. Go on your little soliloquy right now. What makes Tetairoa McMillan the best receiver in the nation, in your opinion?
It does. It hurts on paper to put him number 2 because to me, I really think about him and our top guy 1A and 1B. But no, I watch him and he reminds me of Mike Evans, or even I saw a comp earlier about Drake London. I think it's a very similar dynamic. 6'5", 210, can move much better than most, much more fluidly than most guys, at that size. Unbelievable down the field. The best returning vertical receiver in college football to me, without question. 96.5 receiving grade on 10-plus yard throws last year. Only 2 Power 5 guys ahead of him, Malik Neighbors and Xavier Legette, who are both first-round picks, and McMillan's well on his way to it. This guy is a freak. He's reliable. He's fast. He's huge. He's got the best – last year had the best man coverage, or I should say receiving grade against man coverage in the country, 91.4. He wins one-on-one. He's unreal on in-breaking routes and crossing routes. That might be the best part, even better than watching him get vertical on go balls and stuff, is watching him on like 15-yard crossers and in routes and turn on the jets coming across the field. There are, it feels like a million examples last year, especially coming down the stretch last year, where he's getting horizontal at about 15 yards and he's taking off on people. He does not move like a normal human being at that size. I'm telling you, he is just, I think he's the total package. And he also, you would think some of those guys take like a Johnny Wilson, who big guys, pretty good route runners, but then the hands, but he only dropped 2 balls and 130 targets last year. So he's reliable. He's reliable as all hell. He's not a normal mover for that size. He was somewhere in the 90s in our gas score. And he just gets better and better as the year went on. Down the stretch, his last 8 games last year, after actually including the loss to USC, and then they ripped off their last 7 wins. 3rd in the nation in yards, 5th in receiving grade, and really the number 1 reason, even more so than Noah Fafita and Jed Fish kind of putting things together at Arizona, even though he's gone now, is Tetairoa McMillan getting hot down the stretch the second half of last year. Because what it did, earlier in the year, they ran this like high percentage offense because Fafita wasn't supposed to be starting and he was the backup, and they ran kind of short stuff, RPO stuff, ran the ball with Jonah Coleman. But as they figured out that McMillan's an elite downfield threat, they became an elite downfield offense. And his chemistry with Fafita returning as well, it's the most dangerous pair right now in the Big 12 and maybe in the country. I don't think McMillan at his size, there's big receivers and we have plenty of them. McMillan's not like normal. Like, that's the best way I can put that. At 6'5", he's not a normal mover. He's got excellent hands. The route running is still probably right now about a 7 or 8 out of 10. He's a good route runner at that size. Maybe not, he might not be an elite separator, but how many guys is 6'5" and 210 are, right? Even Mike Evans isn't the most elite separator, but he's open because of who he is, right? He's still 6'5" and can get up and make contested catches. McMillan, to me, of all the guys on our top 10 and of any receiver in the country, I think he's the freakiest one, talent-wise.
Yeah, dude, there's a video of him that came out recently of him doing like a 360 between the legs catch, and there's another video right after where he went above one of the corners and caught it like that right over the corner's head too. Dude's a freak, man. I mean, if you throw it his way, there's a very good chance he's coming down with it. And there's a couple reasons for that. You mentioned it right there. He's 6'5", 205 pounds, giving him a larger catch radius than literally anyone that we have in our top 10 list. 17 contested catches last year, which were second in the country only to Rome Odunze. And the second reason for that, you mentioned it, excellent hands. So of the receivers, Dalton, you mentioned the 2 drops on 132 targets, you said?
130, yeah.
Yeah, 130. So of Power 5 receivers with at least 100 targets this past year, McMillan had the lowest drop rate out of all of them at about 2%. And Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze were the only ones who had more receiving yards than Tetairoa McMillan last year. McMillan had nearly 1,400 receiving yards, and they also were the only ones in the country who had more receiving first downs / touchdowns than McMillan as well. McMillan had 63 receiving yards, receiving first downs / touchdowns as well. So McMillan, man, he's an absolute freak. He tested out in the about 91st percentile of our gas score. He had about a top speed of almost 21 miles per hour last year, which for a 6'5" receiver is absolutely ludicrous as well. He's a total package, man. If you want an X receiver in next year's draft, Tetairoa McMillan is probably your best bet to take as your number 1 X receiver. And he's going to be maybe a top 10 pick in the NFL draft as well. It's going to be hard for you, Dalton, because of how much you love him. But what are the negatives that you see with Tetairoa McMillan?
There really aren't a ton. Like I said, the route running could always be better at that size, but I mean, I think it just has to be a different expectation, right? Than when we talk about the Luther Burdens and the Tej Johnson. Like you can't compare like a Tetairoa McMillan route running to like a Xavier Restrepo. That's not fair, right? It's two completely different players. But no, I think the big question for me more so than McMillan himself is just a new offense with a new head coach and Jed Fish leaving and everything like that. If they can just lock in on, and Jacob Cowing is gone, right? He took a lot of those inside targets away too, and he got a huge target share. Just as him being now expected as the number 1 guy, expectations in a new offense, and I mean, because he did everything last year, man. I mean, this area, you got to remember where Arizona was 2 or 3 years ago as a program, and him and Fafita and Jed Fish within the last year have just turned the whole thing around. Now, can they do it with another head coach in a new offense? But as far as his skill set, I really don't have a lot, because I think at worst he's T. Higgins, and at best, like, we're really talking about going as high as where like Mike Evans and Drake London went in the draft. I think he's that type of guy. He's a vertical threat. He can do things with the ball in his hands after the catch. He's the best vertical receiver returning in college football, and I think him and Fafita just go so well together. And it's that last point that the best grade in the country against man coverage. I don't even know why you would look at this guy and play man coverage against him. I really don't know. I wouldn't even bother. I think there's probably only two or three corners in the country who could reasonably. It would take a Will Johnson level of guy to play man-to-man against him. If I'm any corner in the Big 12, I'm just not, because Arizona's got the best corner in the Big 12 too, and Tetairoa Davis. So you can't even do it. Can you imagine watching that battle?
Dude, I was just gonna say, McMillan. 6'4" Tetairoa Davis against 6'5" Tetairoa McMillan. It's not like it's a size, nightmare matchup nightmare for Davis. Like, he can match up with him. That practice footage, I would kill for that.
Davis, if he can cover McMillan, must feel like he can cover just anybody.
Yeah,
seriously. Like he's probably just jamming other dudes into the ground, because it's just a nuts matchup to watch him practice every day.
So I mentioned this before, I think in a previous episode we had on, where I was like, there's some, obviously tape is king, but there's some times where prospects like, dude, give me the practice tape, and that's all I need to know. A couple that come to mind are Derek Stingley Jr. against Jamar Chase. Give me those practice footage. We actually got a couple of those reps in practice, and they were as awesome as you might think they are. And then also Penei Sewell against Kayvon Thibodeau when they're at Oregon together. Give me that. Like that. I think this is another one too. It's like Tetairoa Davis against Tetairoa McMillan, massive corner against a massive receiver. I want to love to see those battles in practice, man, because I think both of them are going to be first-round picks next year, and I really like that a lot. I would love to see that matchup a lot. For McMillan, though, great hands, but over the last 2 years, he is in the 41st percentile in terms of contested catch rate. He does make a lot of contested catches. He has 24 over the last 2 years, which is really, really high. But that's out of 55 contested targets as well, which is about a 43%, 44% rate for McMillan. So the rate of contested catches isn't the best right now. It's a little bit below average. I think it's hard to say that when he's making ridiculous catches, but I think the consistency there is important for him. And the reason why he has 55 contested targets over the last 2 years is because he's in the 9th percentile of separation rate against single coverage, which is in about 41% open target rate against single coverage. So that's why he has so many contested targets. He's just not separating as well as some other guys on this list. But again, he's 6'5". Like, he's 6'5", 205. You're gonna expect that for a massive, massive receiver like that. But man, I know the number one guy on our list is probably number one on almost everyone's list, but Dalton and I want to let you guys know it's not a number one and then number two. It's a 1A, 1B, man, because I really think it depends on your flavor of receiver, and McMillan has a really good argument for being the number one guy on this list. But right now, he's just in at number two, and a very, very deserving number two, Tetairoa McMillan, the Arizona receiver.